Alright, so let's talk about integers and absolute value. So, you guys have all seen the number line before, and you guys all know our basic numbers, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, the opposite of all of our whole numbers there are integers. So, integers include -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. So, whole numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just your counting numbers, like you've always done. And then your integers are all the opposite of your counting numbers. So -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. So if I had the number -5 and I want the opposite, the opposite of -5 would be 5. The opposite of 3 would be -3. The opposite of -24 would be 24. Alright, so when we're talking integers, we're talking about the negative numbers along with the positives, but here we're just going to focus on the negatives. So I want to compare -10 and -4. So -10 is right here and -4 is right there. So when you're comparing these, you have to think which one is greater, which one's less. So one way to visualize that is, would you rather owe somebody $4 or owe them $10? So hopefully you would only want to owe somebody $4 instead of 10. So that makes 4 greater than -10. You'll also notice on the number line, the -4 is to the right of -10. Anything to the right is going to be greater. Anything to the left is going to be less than. Alright, so if we look at -8 and -6, so -8 is right here, -6 is right here, -6 is to the right, so it is greater. Alright, so let's talk about absolute value. So, the way I think of this is, in the mornings I start at my house, and my son's school is over here, and I take off with him in the stroller, and we run to school. It's 2 miles to get there. Then I turn around and I come back home. Now, I ran 2 miles there and then I ran 2 miles home. So I went there and I went back. I didn't run 0 miles. I ran 2 miles there and then another 2 miles back. So in total, I ran 4 miles to get my son to school. So what you can learn from that is distance can't be negative. And so that's what absolute value is. Absolute value is written with 2 lines around a number. So say we have the absolute value of -3. So what that's telling us is, how far is -3 from 0? So if you're looking on a number line, we have 0 here, we got -1, -2, -3. So I have 1, 2, 3 places from 0. So the absolute value of -3 is 3. Because distance can't be negative. Alright, a couple more absolute value problems. So the absolute value of -8. -8 would be 8 spaces from 0, so it is 8. The absolute value of 4, it's 4 places from 0, so it would be 4. And the absolute value of -25 would be 25. There's one special case that you need to know about, and that's if you have a negative sign on the outside of your absolute value bars. So the absolute value, the negative absolute value of 9. So the absolute value of 9 would be 9, but because that negative is on the outside, your answer would be -9. So if you ever see a negative on the outside of your absolute value, then your answer will be negative. Other than that, your answer is always going to be positive. Alright, so let's do one more, and we're going to compare in order from least to greatest. So let's work out all of these first, figure out what the value is of each number, and then we'll put them in order from least to greatest. So the absolute value of negative 5 would be 5. Negative 3 is still just negative 3. The absolute value of 4 would be 4. And then 3 would just be 3. And then the negative absolute value of 2, well, the absolute value of 2 is 2, and then add that negative sign, so that would be negative 2. So our least value here is our negative 3, so that's going to come first. Second least value would be the negative 2, and you want to write it in the form that it came in, so the negative absolute value of 2. Our next value would be 3, and then the absolute value of 4, and then 5 comes next, so that's the absolute value of negative 5. So that is in order from least to greatest.